boy, this is golf we're practicing, not cricket. Slow back and stiff left arm. And it's no good just whacking the ball as if you were the headmaster and the ball was you. It'll never go more than 50 yards if you do. Get a rhythm. A good golf swing is a matter of aesthetics, not of brute strength. Why have you stopped?
I think we've made a tear in the carpet, sir.
Nonsense. That was there already. Do I know you?
No, sir.
What's your name?
Taplow.
Taplow. No, I don't. You're not a scientist, I gather.
No, sir. I'm still in the lower fifth. I can't specialize until next term. That's to say, if I've got my remove all right.
Don't you know yet if you've got your remove?
No, sir. Mr. Crocker Harris doesn't tell us the results like the other masters.
Why not?
Well, you know what he's like, sir.
I believe there is a rule that form results should only be announced by the headmaster on the last day of term.
Yes, but who pays any attention to it except Mr. Crocker Harris?
I don't, I admit, but that's no criterion. So you've got to wait until tomorrow to know your fate, have you?
Yes, sir.
Supposing the answer is favourable, what then?
Oh, science, sir, of course.
Yes, we get all the slackers.
I'm extremely interested in science, sir.
Are you? I'm not. Not at least in the science I have to teach.
Well, sir, I think science is a good deal more exciting than the muck in this book.
What is this muck?
Aeschylus, sir, the Agamemnon.
And your considered view is that the Agamemnon of Aeschylus is muck, is it?
No, sir. I don't think the play is muck, exactly. I suppose, in a way, it's rather a good plot, really. A wife murdering her husband and having a lover and all that. I only meant the way it's taught to us. Just a lot of Greek words strung together, and 50 lines if you get them wrong.
You sound a little bitter, Taplow.
I am rather, sir.
Kept in, eh?
No, sir. Extra work.
Extra work on the last day of school?
Yes, sir. And I might be playing golf. You'd think he'd have enough to do anyway himself, considering he's leaving tomorrow for good. But oh no, I missed a day last week when I had flu. So here I am. And look at the weather, sir.
Bad luck. Still, there's one consolation. You're pretty well bound to get you removed tomorrow for being a good boy and taking extra work.
Well, I'm not so sure, sir. That would be true of the ordinary masters, all right. They just wouldn't dare not give a chap a remove after he's taking extra work. It would be such a bad advertisement for them. But those sort of rules don't apply to the Mr. Crocker Harris. I asked him yesterday outright if he'd given me a remove. And do you know what he said, sir?
No, what?
My dear Taplow, I've given you exactly what you deserve, no less, and certainly no more. Do you know, sir, I think he may have marked me down rather than up for taking extra work. I mean, the man's barely human. Sorry, sir. Have I gone too far?
Yes, much too far.
Sorry, sir. I sort of got carried away.
Evidently. Taplow?
Yes, sir?
What was it Mr. Crocker Harris said to you? Just repeat it, would you?
My dear Taplow, I've given you exactly what you deserve. No less, and certainly no more.
Not in the least like him. Read your nice Aeschylus and be quiet.
Aeschylus.
Look, what time did Mr. Crocker Harris tell you to be here?
6:30, sir.
Well, he's 10 minutes late. Why don't you cut? You could still get 9 holes in before lockup.
Oh, no, I couldn't cut. Cut the crock, Mr. Crocker Harris? I shouldn't think it's ever been done in the whole time he's been here. God knows what would happen if I did. He'd probably follow me home or something.
I must admit, I envy him the effect he seems to have on you boys in his form. You all seem scared to death of him. What does he do? Beat you all or something?
Good Lord, no. He's not a sadist, like one or two of the others.
I beg your pardon?
A sadist, sir, is someone who gets pleasure out of giving pain.
Indeed. But I think you went on to say that some other masters.
Well, of course, they are, sir. I won't mention names, but you know them as well as I do. Of course, I know most masters think we boys don't understand a thing, but dash it, sir, you're different. You're young, well, comparatively anyway, and you're science, and you canvassed for Labour in the last election. You must know what sadism is.
Good Lord, what are public schools coming to?
Anyway, the croc isn't a sadist. That's what I'm saying. He wouldn't be so frightening if he were, because at least it would show he had some feelings. But he hasn't. He's all shriveled up inside like a nut, and he seems to hate people to like him. It's funny that. I don't know any other master who doesn't like being liked.
And I don't know any boy who doesn't trade on that very foible.
Well, it's natural, sir, but not with the croc.
Mr. Crocker Harris.
Uh, Mr. Crocker Harris. The funny thing is that, in spite of everything, I do rather like him. I can't help it. And sometimes I think he sees it, and that seems to shrivel him up even more.
I'm sure you're exaggerating.
No, sir, I'm not. In form the other day, he made one of his little classical jokes. Of course, nobody laughed because nobody understood it, myself included. Still, I knew he'd meant it to be funny, so I laughed. Not out of sucking up, sir, I swear, but ordinary common politeness, and feeling a bit sorry for him having made a dud joke. Now, I can't remember what the joke was, but let's say it was Benedictus, Benedicator, Benedictine. Now you laugh, sir.
Ha 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 ha.
Taplow, you laughed at my little pun, I noticed. I must confess I'm flattered at the evident advance your Latinity has made, that you should so readily have understood what the rest of the form did not. Perhaps now you would be good enough to explain it to them, so that they too can share your pleasure. Come along, Taplow. Do not be so selfish as to keep a good joke to yourself. Tell the others. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Mrs. Croc's arrived.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Do you think she heard? I think she did. She was probably here quite a time. If she heard and she tells him, there goes my remove.
Nonsense.
Taplow, isn't it? Waiting for my husband.
Uh, yes.
He's at the bursar's and might be there quite some time. If I were you, I'd go.
He said most particularly I was to come.
Well, why don't you run away for a quarter of an hour and come back?
Supposing he gets here before me.
I'll take the blame. No, I tell you what, you can do a job for him. Take this prescription to the chemist and get it made up.
All right, Mrs. Crocker Harris.
And while you're there, you might as well slip into Stewart's and have an ice. Here's a shilling. Catch.
Thanks awfully.
Oh, Tapler.
Yes, Mrs. Crocker Harris?
I had a letter from my father today in which he says he once had the pleasure of meeting your mother.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was at some fete or another in Bradford. My uncle, that's Sir William Bartop, you know, made the speech, and so did your mother. My father met her afterwards at tea.
Oh, really?
He said he found her quite charming.
Yes, she's jolly good at those sort of functions. I mean, I'm sure she found him charming too. So long.
Thank you for coming round.
That's all right.
You're staying for dinner?
If I may,
If you may. Give me a cigarette. You haven't given the cigarette case away yet, I see.
do you think I would?
Frankly, yes. Luckily, it's a man's case. I don't suppose any of your girlfriends would want it.
Don't be silly.
Where have you been all this week?
Correcting exam papers and making reports. You know what end of term is like.
I do know what end of term is like, but even Andrew has managed this last week to take a few hours off to say goodbye to people.
I really have been appallingly busy. Besides, I'm coming to stay with you in Bradford.
Not for over a month. Andrew doesn't start his new job until September the 1st. That's one of the things I had to tell you.
Oh, I had meant to be in Devonshire in September.
Who with?
My family.
Surely you can go earlier, can't you? Go in August.
It'll be difficult.
Then you better come to me in August.
But Andrew will still be there. I think I can manage September.
That would be better from every point of view, except that it means that I shan't see you for 6 weeks.
You'll survive that, all right.
Yes, I'll survive it, but not as easily as you will. I haven't much pride, have I, my darling? I love you so much. Frank, you seem very nervous.
I'm afraid of that screen arrangement. You can't see people coming in.
Oh, yes. That reminds me. What were you and Taplow up to when I came in just now? Making fun of my husband?
Afraid so, yes.
It sounded rather a good imitation. I must get him to do it for me sometime. It was very naughty of you to encourage him.
I know, it was.
Bad for discipline.
Exactly. Hurrying in favour with the boys, too. My God, how easy it is to be popular. I've only been a master 3 years, but I've already slipped into an act and a vernacular that I just can't get out of. Why can't anyone ever be natural with the little blighters?
They probably wouldn't like it if you were.
I don't see why not. No one seems to have tried it yet anyway. I suppose the trouble is we're all too scared of them. Either one gets forced into an attitude of false and hearty and jocular bonhomie like myself, or into the sort of petty, soulless tyranny which your husband uses to protect himself against the lower fifth.
He'd never be popular, whatever he did.
Possibly not. He ought never to have become a schoolmaster, really. Why did he?
It was his vocation, he said. He was sure he'd make a big success of it, especially when he got his job here. First go off. Fine success he's made, hasn't he?
You should have stopped him.
How was I to know? He talked about getting a house, then a headmastership.
The Crocker headmaster. That's a pretty thought.
Yes, it's funny to think of now, all right. Still, he wasn't always a crock, you know. He had a bit more gumption once. At least I thought he had. Don't let's talk any more about him. It's too depressing.
I'm sorry for him.
He's not sorry for himself, so why should you be? It's me you should be sorry for.
I am.
Then show me.
What have you been doing all day?
Calling on the other masters' wives, saying fond farewells. I've worked off 12. I have another 7 to do tomorrow.
You poor thing, I don't envy you.
It's the housemaster's wives that are worse. They're also damn patronizing. You should have heard Betty Carstairs. My dear, it's such a terrible bad luck on you both that your husband should get this heart trouble just when, if only he had stayed on, he'd been bound to get a house. I mean, he's considerably senior to my Arthur as it is, and they simply couldn't have gone on past him over, could they?
There's a word for Betty Carstairs, my dear, that I would hesitate to employ before a lady.
She's got her eye on you anyway.
Betty Carstairs? What utter rot!
Oh, yes, she has. I saw you at that concert. Don't think I didn't notice.
Really, darling, really, I detest the woman.
Then what were you doing in her box at Lord's?
Carstairs invited me. I went there because it was a good place to see the match from.
Yes, I'm sure it was. Much better than the grandstand anyway.
Oh, my God.
It's all right, my dear. Don't bother to apologize. We gave the seat away as it happens.
I'm most terribly sorry.
It's all right. We couldn't afford a box, you see.
It wasn't that. You know it wasn't that. It's just that I clean forgot.
Funny you didn't forget the Carstairs invitation.
Millie, don't be a fool.
It's you who are the fool. Frank, have you never been in love? I know you're not in love with me, but haven't you ever been in love with anyone? Don't you realize what torture you inflict on someone who loves you when you do a thing like that?
I told you I'm sorry. I don't know what more I can say.
Why not the truth?
The truth is, I clean forgot.
The truth is, you had something better to do, and why not say it?
All right. Believe that if you like. It happens to be a lie, but believe it all the same. Only for God's sake, stop this.
Then, for God's sake, show me some pity. Do you think it's any pleasanter for me to believe that you cut me because you forgot? Do you think that doesn't hurt either? Oh, damn. I was so determined to be brave and not mention Lord's. Why did I? Frank, just tell me one thing. Just tell me you're not running away from me. That's all I want to hear.
I'm coming to Bradford.
I think if you don't, I'll kill myself.
I'm coming to Bradford.
Tapler is desirous of obtaining a remove from my form so that he can spend the rest of his career here playing happily with the crucibles, retorts and Bunsen burners of your science fit.
Oh, has he
Has he what?
obtained his remove?
He has obtained exactly what he deserves. No less and certainly no more.
I see. Well, goodbye for now.
And now, Taplow, line 1399. Begin.
Chorus. We are surprised at,
We marvel at,
we marvel at thy tongue. How bold thou art that
thou
thou canst boastfully speak,
utter such a boastful speech
utter such a boastful speech over the bloody corpse of the husband you have slain.
Taplow, I presume you're using a different text from mine.
No, sir.
That is strange. For in the line as I have it, however diligently I search, I can discover no bloody, no corpse, no you have slain, simply husband.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Then why do you invent words that simply are not there?
I thought they sounded better, sir. More exciting. After all, she did kill her husband, sir. She's just been revealed with his dead body.
I'm delighted at this evidence, Taplow, of your interest in the rather more lurid aspects of dramaturgy. But I feel I must remind you that you're supposed to be construing Greek, not collaborating with Aeschylus.
Yes, but still, sir, translator's license, sir. I didn't get anything wrong. And after all, it's a play and not just a bit of Greek construe.
I seem to detect a note of end of term in your remarks. I'm not denying that the Agamemnon is a play. It is perhaps the greatest play ever written.
I wonder how many people in the form know that. Sorry, sir. Shall I go on? Shall I go on, sir?
When I was a very young man, only 2 years older than you are now, I wrote for my own pleasure a translation of the Agamemnon, a very free translation, I remember, in rhyming couplets.
The whole Agamemnon in verse. That must have been hard work, sir.
It was hard work, but I derived great joy from it. The play had so excited and moved me that I wished to communicate, however imperfectly, some of that emotion to others. When I had finished it, I remember I thought it very beautiful, almost more beautiful than the original.
Was it ever published, sir?
No. Yesterday I looked for the manuscript while I was packing my papers. I was unable to find it. I fear it is lost, like so many other things, lost for good.
Hard luck, sir. Shall I go on, sir?
No. Go back and get that last line right.
That thou canst utter such a boastful speech over thy husband.
Yes. And now, if you would be so kind, you will do the line again without the facial contortion, which you just found necessary to accompany it.
Utter a boastful.
What? Is Taplow still here? The headmaster just coming up the drive. Don't tell him I'm in. The fish pie isn't in the oven yet.
I'd better go, hadn't I, sir? I mean, I don't want to be in the way.
We do not yet know that it is I the headmaster wishes to see. Other people live in this building.
Ah, Crooker Harris, I've caught you in. I'm so glad. I hope I'm not disturbing you.
I've been taking a pupil in extra work.
On the penultimate day of term? That argues either great conscientiousness on your part or considerable backwardness on his.
Perhaps a combination of both.
Quite so. But as this is my only chance of speaking to you before tomorrow, I think that perhaps your pupil will be good enough to excuse us.
Oh, yes, sir. That's really quite all right.
I'm extremely sorry, Taplow. Please explain to your father exactly what occurred over this lost hour and tell him I shall in due course be writing to him to return the money involved.
Yes, sir. But please don't bother, sir. I know it's all right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Has Mr. Gilbert called on you yet?
Gilbert, sir? Who is he?
Gilbert is your successor with the lower fifth. As he and his wife will be taking over this flat, I thought perhaps you wouldn't mind if he came in to look it over.
No, of course not.
I've told you about him, I think. He is a very brilliant young man and won exceptionally high honours at Oxford. Not, of course, as high as you yourself won there. He didn't, for instance, win the Chancellor's Prize for Latin Verse, or the Gainsford.
Oh, he won the Hartford Latin then?
No. Did you win that too?
I did.
It's sometimes rather hard to remember that you are perhaps the most brilliant classical scholar we've ever had at the school.
You are very kind.
Over my face.
What?
Right. Andrew, you are very kind.
You're leaning forward a little bit. That's better. That's better. You were very kind.
Hard to remember, I mean, because of your other activities. Your brilliant work on the school timetable, for instance, and also for your heroic battle for so long and against such odds with the soul-destroying lower fifth.
Well, I've not found that my soul has been destroyed by the lower fifth, headmaster.
I was joking, of course.
Oh, I see.
Is your wife in?
No, not at the moment.
I shall have a chance of saying goodbye to her tomorrow. Actually, I'm rather glad I've got you to myself. I have a delicate matter, two rather delicate matters to broach.
Yes, headmaster.
Well, now, you've been with us in all 18 years, haven't you? It is extremely unlucky that you should have to retire at so comparatively early an age, and so short a time before you would have been eligible for a pension.
You have decided then not to award me a pension?
Not I, my dear fellow. It has nothing at all to do with me. It's the governors who, I'm afraid, have been forced to turn down your application. I put your case to them as well as I could, but they decided with great regret that they couldn't make an exception to the rule.
But I thought, my wife thought that an exception was made some 5 years ago.
Ah, in the case of Buller, you mean? True. But the circumstances with Buller were quite remarkable. It was, after all, in playing rugger against the school that he received that injury.
Yes, I remember.
And then the governors received a petition from boys and old boys and parents with over 500 signatures.
I would have signed that petition myself, but through some oversight, I was not asked.
He was a splendid fellow, Buller, splendid. Doing very well too now, I gather.
I'm delighted to hear it.
Your own case, of course, is equally deserving, if not more so, for Buller was a younger man. Unfortunately, rules are rules and are not made to be broken every few years. At any rate, that is the governor's view.
I quite understand.
I give you word. Now, might I ask you a rather impertinent question?
Certainly.
You have, I take it, private means?
My wife has some.
Yes. Your wife has often told me of her family connections. I understand her father has a business in Bradford, isn't it?
Yes. He runs a men's clothing shop in the arcade.
Indeed. Your wife's remarks had led me to imagine something a little more extensive.
My father-in-law made a settlement on my wife at the time of our marriage. She has about 300 a year of her own. I have nothing. Is that the answer to your question, Headmaster?
Yes, thank you for your frankness. Now, this private school you're going to.
My salary at the Crammers is to be £200 a year
Quite so. With board and lodging, of course.
for 8 months of the year.
Yes, I see. Of course, you know, there is the School Benevolent Fund that deals with cases of actual hardship.
There will be no actual hardship, Headmaster.
No, I'm glad you take that view. I must admit, though, I had hoped that your own means had proved a little more ample. Your wife had certainly led me to suppose
I'm not
that.
denying that a pension would have been very welcome, Headmaster, but I see no reason to quarrel with the Governor's decision. What is the other delicate matter you've come to discuss?
Well, it concerns the arrangement of prize giving tomorrow. You are, of course, prepared to say a few words.
I had assumed you would call on me to do so.
Of course, it is always done, and I know the boys appreciate the custom.
I've already made a few notes of what I'm going to say. Perhaps I could show you.
No, no, that isn't necessary at all. I know I can trust your discretion, not to say your wit. It will be, I know, a very moving moment for you, indeed for us all. But as I'm sure you realize, it is far better to keep these occasions from becoming too heavy and distressing. You know how little the boys appreciate sentiment.
I do.
That is why I've planned my own reference to you at the end of my speech to be rather more light and jocular than I would otherwise have made it.
I quite understand. I too have prepared a few little jokes and puns for my speech. One, a play of words on Wale, farewell, and Wally, the Christian name of a backward boy in my class, is, I think, rather happy.
Yes. Yes, that should go down extremely well.
I'm glad you like it.
And now, there is a particular favour I have to ask of you in connection with the ceremony, and I know I shall not have to ask in vain. Fletcher, as you know, is leaving too.
Yes. He's going into the city, they tell me.
Yes. Now, he is, of course, considerably junior to you. He has only been here, let me see, 5 years. But as you know, he's done great things for our cricket. Positive wonders when you remember what doldrums we were in before he came.
That win at Lord's this year was certainly most inspiriting.
Exactly. Now, I'm sure that tomorrow the boys will make the occasion of his farewell speech a tremendous demonstration of gratitude. The applause might go on for minutes. You know what the boys feel about Lords. And I seriously doubt my ability to cut it short, or even, I admit, the propriety of trying to do so. Now, you see the quandary in which I am placed.
Perfectly. You wish to refer to me and for me to make my speech before you come to Fletcher.
It's extremely awkward, and I feel wretched about asking it of you. But it's more for your own sake than for mine or Fletcher's that I do. After all, a climax is what one must try to work up to on such occasions.
Naturally, Headmaster, I wouldn't wish to provide an anti-climax.
You really mustn't take it amiss, my dear fellow. The boys, in applauding Fletcher for several minutes, and yourself for, well, not quite so long, won't be making any personal demonstration between you. It will be quite impersonal, I assure you, quite impersonal.
I understand.
I knew you would. And I can hardly tell you how wisely I think you have chosen. Well now, as that is all my business, I think perhaps I'd better be getting along. This has been a terribly busy day for me. For you too, I imagine.
Yes,
Ah, headmaster, how good of you to drop in.
Mrs. Crocker Harris, how are you? You're looking extremely well, I must say. Has anyone ever told you, Crocker Harris, that you have a very attractive wife?
Many people, sir. But then I hardly need to be told.
Can I persuade you to stay a few moments and have a drink, headmaster? It's so rarely we have the pleasure of seeing you.
Unfortunately, dear lady, I was just on the point of leaving. I have two frantic parents waiting for me at home. You are dining with us tomorrow, both of you, aren't you?
Yes, indeed, and so looking forward to it.
I'm so glad. We could say our sad farewells then. Au revoir, Crocker Harris, and thank you very much.
Don't forget to take your medicine, Andrew dear, will you?
No,
Lucky invalid to have such a very charming nurse.
I really don't know what to say to all these compliments, headmaster. I don't believe you mean a word of them.
Every word. Till tomorrow, then. Goodbye.
Well, do we get it?
get what?
Pension, of course. Do we get it?
No,
My God, why not?
it's against the rules.
Buller got it, didn't he? Buller got it. What's the idea of giving it to him and not to us?
The governors are afraid of establishing a precedent.
The mean old brutes. My God, what I wouldn't like to say to them. And what did you say? Just sat there and made a joke in Latin, I suppose.
There wasn't very much I could say in Latin or any other language.
Oh, wasn't there? I'd have said it all right. I wouldn't have just sat there twiddling my thumbs and taken it from that old phony of a headmaster. But then, of course, I'm not a man. What do they expect you to do? Live on my money, I suppose?
No, I shall be perfectly able to support myself.
Yourself? Doesn't the marriage service say something about the husband supporting his wife? Doesn't it? You ought to know.
Yes, it does.
And how do you think you're going to do that on 200 a year?
I shall do my utmost to save some of it. You're welcome to it if I can.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for precisely nothing. What else did the old fool have to say?
Headmaster, he wants me to make my speech tomorrow before instead of after Fletcher.
Yes, I know he was going to ask that.
You knew.
Okay. Yes, he asked my advice about a week ago. I told him to go ahead. I knew you wouldn't mind, and as there isn't a Mrs. Fletcher to make me look a fool, I don't give two hoots. Come in.
Mr. Crocker Harris,
Yeah? Oh, is it Mr. Gilbert? The headmaster told me you might look in.
I do hope I'm not disturbing you.
Not at all. This is my wife.
How do you do?
Mr. Gilbert and his wife are our successors to this flat, my dear.
Oh, yes. How nice to meet you.
I really won't keep you more than a second. I thought as I was here, you wouldn't mind me taking a squint at our future home. This is the drawing room, I suppose.
Well, it's really a living room. Andrew uses it as a study.
How charmingly you've done it.
Oh, do you think so? I'm afraid it isn't nearly as nice as I'd like to make it. But a schoolmaster's wife has to think of so many things beside curtains and covers. Boys with dirty boots, and a husband with leaky fountain pens, for instance. And now I shall have to leave you. I'm in the middle of cooking dinner.
Do you want to see the rest of the flat?
No, I leave all that sort of thing to my wife. She's the boss. What I was thinking was perhaps you could tell me something about the lower fifth.
Yes. What would you like to know?
Well, sir, quite frankly, I'm petrified.
Well, I don't think you need to be. They're mostly boys of about 15 or 16. They're not very difficult to handle.
The headmaster said you ruled them with a rod of iron. He called you the Himmler of the lower fifth.
Oh, did he? The Himmler of the lower fifth? I think he exaggerated. Well, I hope he exaggerated. The Himmler of the lower fifth. Did he really say that?
He surely only meant that you kept the most wonderful discipline. I must say I do admire you for that. I couldn't even manage that with 11-year-olds. So what I'll be like with 15s and 16s, I shudder to think.
Well, it's not so difficult. They aren't bad boys, sometimes a little wild and unfeeling perhaps, but not bad. The Himmler of the lower fifth. Dear me.
Oh, perhaps I shouldn't have said that. I've been tactless, I'm afraid.
Oh no. From the very beginning, I realised that I didn't possess the knack of making myself liked. A knack that you will find you do possess.
Do you think so?
Oh yes, I'm quite sure of that. It's not a quality of great importance to a schoolmaster, though. Too much of it, as you may also find, is as great a danger as the total lack of it. Forgive me for lecturing, won't you?
I want to learn.
I can only teach you from my own experience. For 2 or 3 years, I tried very hard to communicate to the boys some of my own joy in the great literature of the past.
Which is what I shall try to do.
Of course, I failed, as you will fail 999 times out of 1,000. But a single success can atone, and more than atone, for all the failure in the world. And sometimes, very rarely it's true, but sometimes I had that success. That was in the early years.
Please go on, sir.
In early years too, I discovered an easy substitute for popularity. I had, of course, acquired, we all do, many little mannerisms and tricks of speech, and I found that the boys were beginning to laugh at me. Yeah,
How did you respond to that?
always very happy about that, and I encouraged the boys' laughter by playing up to it. It made our relationship so very much easier. They didn't like me as a man, but they found me funny as a character. And you can teach more things by laughter than by earnestness. I never did have much of a sense of humour. So, for a time, you see, I was quite a success as a schoolmaster. I fear this is all very personal and embarrassing to you. Forgive me. You need have no fears about the lower fifth.
I'm afraid I said something that hurt you very much. It's myself you must forgive, sir. Believe me, I'm desperately sorry.
There's no need. You were merely telling me what I should have known for myself. Perhaps I did in my heart and hadn't the courage to acknowledge it. I knew, of course, that I was not only not liked, but now positively disliked. I had realised too that the boys, for many long years now, had ceased to laugh at me. I don't know why they no longer found me a joke.
Perhaps it was your illness?
No, I don't think it was that. Something deeper than that. Not a sickness of the body, but a sickness of the soul. At all events, it didn't take much discernment on my part to realise I'd become an utter failure as a schoolmaster. Still, stupidly enough, I hadn't realised that I was also feared. The Himmler of the lower fifth. I suppose that will become my epitaph.
Sir, thank you for giving me these insights.
I cannot for the life of me imagine why I should have chosen to unburden myself to you, a total stranger, when I have been silent to others for so long. Perhaps it is because my very unworthy mantle is about to fall on your shoulders. If that is so, I shall take a prophet's privilege and foretell that you will have a very great success with the lower fifth.
Thank you, sir. Gracious me, is that the time? I have to catch a train.
You will, I know, respect the confidences I've just made to you.
I should hate you to think I wouldn't.
I'm sorry to have embarrassed you. I don't know what came over me. I've not been very well, you know. Goodbye, my dear fellow, and my best wishes.
Thank you. The very best of good luck to you too, sir, in your future career.
My future, yes, thank you.
Well, goodbye, sir.
Has he gone?
Had a train to catch.
He looks as if he's got what it takes. I should think he'll be a success, all right.
That's what I thought.
I don't think it's much of a career, though, a schoolmaster, for a likely young chap like that.
I know you don't.
Still, I bet when he leaves this place, it won't be without a pension. It'll be roses, roses all the way, and tears and cheers. And goodbye, Mr. Chips.
I expect so.
What's the matter with you?
Nothing.
You're not going to have another of your attacks, are you? You look dreadful.
I'm perfectly all right.
You know best, I suppose. Your medicine's there anyway if you want it. Now I must get on with my work. I can't read a book all day like some people.
Come in. Yes, Taplow, what is it?
Nothing, sir.
What do you mean, nothing?
I just came back to say goodbye, sir.
Oh,
I didn't have a chance with the head here. I rather dashed out, I'm afraid. I thought I'd just come back and wish you luck, sir.
thank you, Taplow. That's good of you.
I thought this book might interest you, sir.
What is it?
Verse translation of the Agamemnon, sir. The Browning version. It's not much good. I've been reading it in the chapel gardens.
Very interesting, Taplow. I know the translation, of course. It has its faults, I agree, but I think you will enjoy it more when you get used to the meter he employed.
It's for you, sir.
For me?
Yes, sir. I've written in it.
Yes. I see. Did you buy this?
Yes, sir. It was only second hand.
You shouldn't have spent your pocket money this way.
That's all right, sir. It wasn't very much. Oh, the price isn't still inside it, is it?
No, just what you've written. Nothing else.
Good. I'm sorry you've got it already. I thought you probably would have.
I haven't got it already. I may have had it once, I can't remember. But I haven't got it now.
That's all right then. What's the matter, sir? Have I got any of the accents wrong?
Well, no. Even the Paris Promenade is perfectly correct. Taplow, would you be good enough to take that bottle of medicine which you so kindly brought and pour me out one dose in a glass which you will find in the bathroom?
Yes, sir.
The doses are clearly marked on the bottle. I usually put a little water with it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Taplow. You must forgive this exhibition of weakness. I've been going through rather a strain lately.
Of course, sir. I quite understand.
Come in.
Oh, sorry. I thought you'd be finished by now.
Come in, Hunter. Do it. It's perfectly all right. Our lesson was over some time ago, but Taplow most kindly came back to say goodbye.
Are you sure I'm not intruding?
No. Look, Hunter, I want you to see this book that Taplow has given me. A translation of the Agamemnon by Robert Browning. Do you see the inscription he's put into it?
Well, yes, but it's no use to me, I'm afraid. I never learnt Greek.
Then we'll have to translate it for him, won't we, Taplow? It means, in a rough translation, God from afar looks graciously upon a gentle master. It comes from the speech of Agamemnon's to Clytemnestra.
I see. Very pleasant and very apt.
Very pleasant, but perhaps not after all so very apt.
May I go now, sir?
Of course. Goodbye, Taplow, and thank you very much.
Goodbye, sir, and the best of luck.
Dear me, what a fool I made of myself in front of that boy, and in front of you, Hunter. I can't imagine what you must think of me.
Nonsense.
I'm not a very emotional person, as you know, but there was something so very touching and kindly about his action, and coming as it did just after. This is a very delightful thing to have, don't you think?
Delightful.
The quotation, of course, he didn't find entirely by himself. I happened to make some little joke about the line in Form the other day. But he must have remembered it all the same to have found it so readily. And perhaps he means it.
I'm sure he does, or he wouldn't have written it.
Hello, Frank. I'm glad you're in time. Lend me a cigarette. I've been gasping for one for an hour.
Here you are. Your husband has just had a very nice present.
Oh, who from?
Taplow.
Oh, Taplow.
He bought it with his own pocket money, Millie, and wrote a very charming inscription inside.
Yes, God looks kindly upon a gracious master.
No, not gracious, gentle. I think gentle is the better translation. I would rather have had this present, I think, than almost anything I can think of.
Let's see it. The artful little beast.
Artful? Why artful? Why artful, Millie?
My dear, because I came into this room this afternoon to find him giving an imitation of you to Frank here. Obviously, he was scared stiff I was going to tell you, and you'd ditch his remove or something. I don't blame him for trying a few bobs worth of appeasement.
I see.
Where are you going, dear? Dinner's nearly ready.
Only to my room for a moment. I won't be long.
You just had a dose of that medicine, dear. I shouldn't have another if I were you.
I am allowed 2 at a time.
Well, see it is 2 and no more, won't you?
Millie, my God, how could you?
Well, why not? Why should he be allowed his comforting little illusions? I'm not.
Listen, you're to go to his room now and tell him that was a lie.
Definitely not. It wasn't a lie.
If you don't, I will.
I shouldn't if I were you. It'll only make things worse. He won't believe you.
We'll see about that.
Go ahead, see what happens. He knows I don't lie to him. He knows what I told him was the truth, and he won't like your sympathy. He'll think you're making fun of him, like Taplow.
We're finished, Millie. You and I.
Frank, really? Don't be hysterical.
I'm not. I mean it.
Oh, yes, you mean it. Of course you mean it. Now just sit down there and relax and forget all about artful little boys and their fight bulb presents and talk to me.
Forget. If I live to be 80, I shall never forget that little glimpse you've just given me of yourself.
Frank, you're making a frightening mountain out of an absurd little molehill.
Of course, but the mountain I'm making in my imagination is so frightening that I'd rather try to forget both it and the repulsive little molehill that gave it birth. But I know I never can. So I tell you, Millie, from this moment, you and I are finished.
You can't scare me, Frank. I know that's what you're trying to do, but you can't do it.
I'm not trying to scare you, Millie. I'm telling you the simple truth. I'm not coming to Bradford.
All right, my dear. If that's the way you feel, don't come to Bradford.
Right. Now I think you ought to go to your room and look after Andrew. I'm leaving.
What is this, Frank? I don't understand. Really, I don't. What have I done?
I think you know what you've done, Millie. Go and look after Andrew.
Andrew? Why this sudden concern for Andrew?
Because I think he's just been about as badly hurt as a human being can be. And as he's a sick man and in a rather hysterical state, it might be a good plan to go and see how he is.
Hurt? Andrew hurt? You can't hurt Andrew. He's dead.
Why do you hate him so much, Millie?
Because he keeps me from you.
That isn't true.
Because he's not a man at all.
He's a human being.
You've got a fine right to be so noble about him after deceiving him for 6 months.
Twice in 6 months, at your urgent invitation. You'd better have the truth, Millie. It had to come sometime. I've never loved you. I've never told you I loved you.
I know, Frank. I know. I've always accepted that.
You asked me just now if I was running away from you. Well, I was.
I knew that too.
But I was coming to Bradford. It was going to be the very last time I was ever going to see you. And at Bradford, I would have told you that.
You wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You've tried to tell me that so often before, and I've always stopped you somehow. And somehow I would have stopped you again.
I don't think so, Millie. Not this time.
Frank, I don't care what humiliations you heap on me. I know you don't give two hoots for me as a person. I've always known that. I've never minded so long as you cared for me as a woman. And you do, Frank. You do. You do, don't you? It'll be all right at Bradford. You'll see. It'll be all right there.
I'm not coming to Bradford, Millie.
You should know me well enough by now, my dear, to realise how unlikely it is that I would ever take an overdose.
I'm not staying to dinner, I'm afraid.
Indeed? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You'll have a glass of sherry.
No, thank you. About Taplow.
Oh, yes.
It is perfectly true that he was imitating you. I, of course, was mostly to blame in that, and I'm very sorry.
That's perfectly all right. Was it a good imitation?
No.
I expect it was. Boys are often very clever mimics.
We talked about you, of course, before that. He said, you probably won't believe this, but I thought I ought to tell you, he said he liked you very much.
Indeed.
I can remember very clearly his exact words. He said, he doesn't seem to like people to like him, but in spite of that, I do, very much. And so, you see, it looks, after all, as if the book might not have been a mere question of appeasement.
The book? Oh, dear me, what a lot of fuss about a little book. And a not very good little book at that.
I would like you to believe me.
Possibly you would, my dear Hunter, but I can assure you I'm not particularly concerned about Taplow's views of my character. Or about your views either, if it comes to that.
I think you should keep that book all the same. You may find it'll mean something to you after all.
Exactly. It will mean a perpetual reminder to myself of the story with which Taplow is at this very moment regaling his friends in the house. I gave the Croc a book to buy him off and he blubbed. The Croc blubbed, I tell you. I was there, I saw it, the Croc blubbed. My mimicry is not as good as his, I fear, forgive me. And now let us leave this idiotic subject and talk of more pleasant things.
If Taplow ever breathes a word of that story to anyone at all, I'll murder him. But he won't. And if you think I will, you greatly underestimate my character as well as his. Goodbye.
Are you leaving so soon? Goodbye, my dear fellow.
As this is the last time I shall probably ever see you, I'm going to offer you a word of advice.
I shall be glad to listen to it.
Leave your wife.
So that you may the more easily carry on your intrigue with her?
How long have you known that?
Since it first began,
How did you find out?
by information,
By whose information?
by someone's whose word I could hardly discredit.
No, that's too horrible to think of.
Nothing is ever too horrible to think of, Hunter. It's simply a question of facing facts.
She might have told you a lie. Have you faced that fact?
She never tells me a lie. In 20 years, she's never told me a lie. Only the truth.
This was a lie.
No, my dear Hunter. Do you wish me to quote you dates?
And she told you 6 months ago?
Isn't it 7?
Then why have you allowed me inside your home? Why haven't you done something? Reported me to the governors? Anything? Made a scene? Knocked me down?
Knocked you down?
You didn't have to invite me to dinner.
My dear Hunter, if over the last 20 years or so I had allowed such considerations to influence my choice of dinner guests, I would have found it increasingly hard to remember which master to invite and which to refuse. You see, Hunter, you mustn't flatter yourself you are the first. My information is a great deal better than yours, you understand. It's authentic.
She's evil.
That's hardly a kindly epithet to apply to a lady whom, I gather, you have asked to marry.
Did she tell you that?
She's a dutiful wife. She tells me everything.
That at least was a lie.
She never lies.
That was a lie. Do you want the truth? Can you bear the truth?
I can bear anything.
What I did cold-bloodedly, out of weakness and ignorance and crass stupidity. I'm bitterly, bitterly ashamed of myself. But in a sense, I'm glad you know, though I'd rather 1,000 times that you'd heard it from me than from your wife. I won't ask you to forgive me. I can only tell you with complete truth that the only emotion she has ever succeeded in arousing in me, she aroused in me for the very first time 10 minutes ago. An intense and passionate disgust.
What a delightfully chivalrous statement.
Forget chivalry, Croc, for God's sake. Forget all your fine mosaic scruples. You must leave her. It's your only chance.
She's my wife, Hunter. You seem to forget that. As long as she wishes to remain my wife, she may.
She's out to kill you.
My dear Hunter, if that was indeed her purpose, you should know by now that she fulfilled it long ago.
Why won't you leave her?
Because I wouldn't wish to add to another grave wrong to one I have already done her.
What wrong have you done her?
To marry her. You see, my dear Hunter, she is really quite as much to be pitied as I. We are, both of us, interesting subjects for your microscope. Both of us needing, from the other, something that would make life supportable for us. And neither of us able to give it.
What on earth do you mean?
Two kinds of love, hers and mine. I may have been, you see, Hunter, a brilliant classical scholar, but I was woefully ignorant of the facts of life. I know better now, of course. I know that in both of us, the love that we should have borne each other has turned to bitter hatred. That's all the problem is. Not a very unusual one, I venture to think, and not nearly as tragic as you seem to imagine. Merely the problem of an unsatisfied wife and a henpecked husband. You'll find it all over the world. It is usually, I believe, a subject for farce. And now, if you have to leave us, my dear fellow, please don't let me detain you any longer.
Don't go to Bradford. Stay here until you take up your new job.
I think I've already told you I'm not interested in your advice.
Leave her. It's the only way.
Will you please go?
All right. I'd just like you to say goodbye to me properly, though, will you? I shan't see you again. I know you don't want my pity, but I would like to be of some help.
If you think by this expression of kindness, Hunter, that you can get me to repeat the shameful experience of emotion I made to Taplow a moment ago, I must tell you, you have no chance. My hysteria over that book just now was no more than a sort of reflex action of the spirit, the muscular twitchings of a corpse. It can never happen again.
A corpse can be revived,
I don't believe in miracles.
don't you? Funnily enough, as a scientist, I do.
Your faith would be touching if I were capable of being touched by it.
You are, I think. I'd like to come and visit you at this Crammers.
That is an absurd suggestion.
I suppose it is rather, but all the same I'd like to do it. May I?
Of course not.
Let's say the 12th of September, then.
Say anything you like, only please go. Please go, Hunter.
That's fixed then. Monday, September the 12th. Goodbye until then.
Goodbye.
Oh, I'm off to have a quick word with Taplow. May I take him a message from you?
What? What message?
Has he got his remove?
He has.
May I tell him?
It is highly irregular, but yes, you may.
Good. Oh, by the way, I'd better have the address of that Crammers.
Dinner's ready. You're staying, Frank, aren't you?
No, I'm afraid not. Croc, what's that address?
The Old Deanery, Malcolm, Dorset.
I'll write to you and you can let me know about trains. Goodbye to you both.
That's a laugh. I must say, you inviting him to stay with you.
I didn't. He suggested it.
He's coming to Bradford. He's not going to you.
The likeliest contingency is that he's not going to either of us.
He's coming to Bradford.
I expect so. Oh, by the way, I'm not. I shall be staying here until I go to Dorset.
Suit yourself. What makes you think I'd join you there?
I don't.
You needn't expect me.
I don't think either of us has the right to expect anything further from the other. Excuse me. Hello? Yes, headmaster. The timetable? Ah, yes. It's perfectly simple. The middle fourth will take a 10-minute break on Tuesdays and a 15-minute break on alternate Wednesdays. Oh, I see. Thank you. That's very good of you. Yes, I think you'll find it'll work out satisfactorily. Oh, by the way, headmaster, I've changed my mind about the prize-giving ceremony. I intend to speak after instead of before Fletcher, as is my privilege. Yes, headmaster, I quite understand, but I'm now seeing the matter in a different light. I know, but I am of the opinion that occasionally an anticlimax can be surprisingly effective. Goodbye. Come along, my dear. We mustn't let our dinner get cold.